will no longer be part of the task force. Member Webb is not here. Member Fruitstone?
Present.
Vice Chair McLean?
Present.
Chairperson Carpenter?
Present.
Very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, for the record, we do have Mr. Gladwin, Mr. Colin Brown. We do have Mr. Adam Old for this particular project, the environmental charrette master plan. They're all acting as consultants. We also have our consulting and planning firm, the Serbia represented here with Ms. Zapp.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mayor. We can go right into approval of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda by task force members?
No.
All right.
No.
Can I get a motion to approve?
I motion.
To approve.
I second.
All right. For all those in favor of approving today's agenda, say aye.
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 All right, hearing none, no no's. The agenda is approved. Approval of minutes for the following meeting, from the following meeting. We're not doing that today, right, Mayor?
No, Madam Chair, I'll have those ready for you guys next meeting. We'll get that one.
Okay, no problem. So I'll jump right to good and welfare. Before we jump into the main agenda item, which I think will really be an open conversation anyways with everyone present, is there anyone that wants to speak on good and welfare? All right, we can jump right in then. Our only agenda item today, environmental charrette master plan.
Okay. So can
Please.
I'd like to take the floor.
I would love
That's
it. Thank you.
All right. So, so since the last meeting, there's a couple of things have happened. First is I want to point out that Adam has put up a page on the Little River Conservancy website where he is archiving everything related to this discussion. So the first thing I want to do is I would like to share my screen, and I just want to show that page. And we now with with the Conservancy hat on, we will continue to archive those materials. So hold on one second. And so I just want to publicly thank Adam for doing that. It was really great. So Adam, it's under water quality.
Campaigns,
Yeah,
environmental plan.
there we go. All right. So as you scroll down through this, it's everything is here, including past charrettes, including many of the materials that and maps that Hugh has provided, our plans, the Resilient Streets Plan, the Adaptation Action Plan in full, the Blue Ways and Greenways slides specifically, and on and on and on, including the South Florida Water Management Sea Level Rise and Resiliency Plan draft. So for anyone who comes and looks at this recording afterwards, the address is littleriverconservancy.org/environmental plan. But anyway, it's all over there. So as we continue this conversation, we can refer to things. We'll find them there for background.
That's outstanding. What a lot of work. Congratulations.
Yeah. All to Adam. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Adam.
Okay. So I want to set up what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about the thinking that I've been going through since our last meeting, and also just to go back to the original impetus for why I brought this forward to the Resiliency Task Force to begin with. And let me start by saying that I actually have come to the realization after our last conversation that I don't think initially we're talking about a charrette, and I will explain why. And I have some materials to share with you why I think we actually have to take one step back from that. But the reason that I brought this to the Resiliency Task Force, Sustainability Task Force, as a possible action item is that it was really starting to become very clear to me that there were many, many complicated things out there right now that were starting to come together. And I have I've prepared sort of a visualization of that with help from my friends, but basically that there were all of these very large and complicated things that were all starting to happen. Some of them really good and aligning with our opportunities, some of them potentially not good, some of them neutral, but all of them out there in the universe. And that since, you know, El Portal is the smallest municipality in Miami-Dade, it has limited resources, yet it sits at the intersection of all of the critical environmental and economic issues that are part of the larger issues that Miami-Dade is facing. And so how could we, as a resiliency committee, representatives of the village, and then also as residents, come together to help the village better deal with some of these things and be better armed and prepared for some of these conversations. So I want to show you guys a presentation that will help you understand it in terms of the way that I've been thinking about it. So let me just expand this a little bit. Can you guys all see that?
Yes.
Okay. So in talking through conversations this over the past 2 weeks, just to try to like wrap my brain around after our last conversation, what I actually thought we were trying to do, or what I thought, what I think we might want to consider. We thought it was really helpful to just go through and like show the state of things now, the types of things that we might be facing in the future, and kind of what might help us create a tool set for this that would help address many of the things that we've been talking about as a committee. So here is a not ranked bubble chart of many of the things that have happened or up until today's meeting, right? So here, some of these are resources, some of these are political moments, some of these are environmental things. So you can just see, right? And there may be other things that aren't on this that you guys might want to add, but just as a rubric, these are some of the things that have happened up until this point. And there's a lot on this chart, right? There's economic forces on this chart. There's environmental forces on this chart. There's agency actions on this chart. There are NGO actions on this chart. There are things that we've done previously as a village that will feed into this process, like the charrettes. There's the developers. So this is sort of like some of the things that we have already in place that are all kind of bumping up against each other for the village. Oops. Here are things that are in front of us that might require us to take action or to respond to, right? And some of these we're already in process with, right? So the flood mitigation plan, whatever the Army Corps of Engineers is going to throw at us, what's going to happen at the Cavista development, the Pelican Harbor development, the Larchmont development, the El Jardín project, our septic to sewer, the stress of manatees and what will happen if there's further degradation, what's happening with the seagrass, the fish kill, Hughes Echo Station Park, the development and zoning requirements for the Brightline Station, the rebuilding of the S27 and all of the technical aspects around that, and then addressing the Native American Mound. There are other things that could go on this slide, but this is just like to demonstrate the types of things that might be coming at us. Part of my impetus for bringing this to the committee was that I felt like we didn't really have a coherent framework for helping us address all of the complexity of both the things in the past and the things that might be coming in front of us, right? So kind of this is what that looks like when you think about it as a process and where we're at as a committee. I know it's kind of hard to see, but a lot of those bubbles that were unorganized are now kind of organized here into columns. So we have a column having to do with planning efforts, development, the political structure, environmental issues, including things related to environmental ecological degradation in the blue, and the NGOs that are also kind of intersecting our work here at the village, right? So those are organized. We've got our meeting today and our process as we move forward, and then those future conditions that we're talking about addressing, or that are coming at us, and we either can have a coherent, like, anchored reaction to them that maybe then affects our zoning, affects the public statements we make, affects the responses that we give to the agencies, affects the asks that we have of those agencies that haven't been made yet, right? So what I'm suggesting is that maybe we're not talking about a charrette. What we're really talking about is like a pre-planning process or a strategic initiative to create a framework for the village that sort of goes back to something that Juan said on the last call, which is that you have a planning you have a body of work that comes out of a charrette or whatever, but then it can become law through zoning, or then it can become, it can be a public statement that then anchors a response to an agency or whatever. I think that we are actually trying to potentially create a framework that has some specificity to it that can then become a tool in the village's toolbox that gets deployed and then affects many different efforts in the future. Like, I feel like that is what's missing. So I imagine this being and I don't know whether or not it lives, Camilla, in some of the documentation that you guys have created for the village. I don't know if it exists as a standalone statement that gets adopted by the village. I don't know yet. I think that's one of the open questions, but I imagine that it anchors our desire for all the things that we've been talking about, right? That talks about blue-green initiatives, that talks about preserving the river, that is really concrete enough that it can then be used in these various responses, as well as like impetus for, envisioning a new park or a new water catchment system or, whatever. And this is a slide that talks a little bit, that sort of shows kind of what the process might look like, right? So if we come up with whatever this is, if it's a statement, if it's a document that gets adopted, if it's an addition to our current planning documentation, I'm not sure, but that it basically can then drive many, many things, including a charrette around things like the park and the mound. But it also can be, we can put some real teeth to it behind it in terms of zoning, perhaps, definitely in terms of having a public facing statement that then informs all of all of our, work with what we want from South Florida management. And also, Elizabeth, that can provide an anchor for the types of things that we want to demonstrate to waterkeepers and to Everglades Law Center and whatever. Like, I'm just thinking it's like, I don't know. I keep thinking of it as a kind of a block that becomes a tool. So, but that I think we are not doing a charrette. We are kind of in a pre-planning process, or we're taking a step back from that, and that there's charrettes that can come out of this in lots of different ways, but there's also urgent action that can come out of this, like what we need to do to address South Florida Water Management's plan, right? So that's my pitch, or at least my kind of, hopefully, a coherent response to the last meeting, and perhaps a helpful way of thinking about what I think we might be out to do. And like, I don't know what you guys think about that. So I'm opening it up for response.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
First of all, I just want to say thank you, first of all, to Adam for that right there. I was looking through that also, going back and forth as the vice chair was talking. I have this other window opened up on my computer. But Vice Chair McLean, I really want to thank you for this. It's interesting because not only have you kind of like read my mind, because I think some of those 4 questions that I first sent you guys before the previous meeting that we had. You like went through all of them in full detail, and you presented something that's so perfect here. My only question would be for all of you guys is, are you guys thinking about looking to have, like, are you guys thinking to develop this framework and to implement this framework into the existing village codes? Or are you guys looking to have the village, like from now on in the future, like the council have to have two different elements that we look at and we use to make our decisions? Like, do you want it to be like, this is like our environmental code, and that's one of the two parameters that we look at and we check everything through when we're making the decision? Or do you guys want to go through the process of taking everything that we decide and implementing that into the existing village code? That's my only question. If we implement everything into the existing village code, it just might take a little bit longer. It might be a little bit harder, because then you're going to have voices that are not environmentalists having their own reason why what should be in the village code. Now, if we do it to where we develop an environmental village code that we give the same respect to as, the existing village code. And so we make a decision, we say, okay, what's our regular, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, village code. And then, okay, what's our environmental village code? What we're deciding, does it pass through all the elements of approval through both of our village codes?
And I just want to add something that you reminded me of, Omar. And I think those are good questions, and I would open it up, because I think the one thing that I feel really strongly after having all these conversations and synthesizing the kind of discussion last time is that there's a certain urgency. I know that people on this call would actually, if I ask them what they think the most urgent thing is that has to be addressed, like, just if we went back to, this, right? Like, what these two things, like, what are the most pressing things? There is definitely going to be a difference of opinion on this call about what is the most important. And part of why I think putting it into this framework was so important is to just make the point that this is super complicated. There's like a lot of, we know this because we've been talking about it for years, like, and those of us who work on the river know it too. It's like, it's really hard to develop a coherent strategy to address the breadth of all of this stuff, right? So I just want to acknowledge that and just say, like, this is all I'm trying to do is actually, is to try to help us get a flexible strategy that's coherent, but that also gives us the tools to address whatever is the most pressing thing that is coming. And next, because we're going to have, it's a little bit like whack-a-mole, right? Or like some kind of carnival game. So how can we do the tool set? But the one thing I do want to encourage the committee to think about is I have a very strong feeling we have to do this quickly, and we can't bog down. So, because we have to address things in the regular business of this committee, like the South Florida Water Management response, probably in parallel with what we're talking about here, because it's so urgent. I think the thing that we heard last time in the regular business meeting about the, South Florida Water Management and Water Keepers project, that's really urgent. So there are things that we need to address urgently. So to your point, I would encourage the committee to think about, and I would like the feedback from you, Mayor, about what is the most expedient way forward, right? What is the quickest way that's going to get us the most, like, I don't want to let, good be the enemy of the great. Like, it's more important that we get action out of this. So.
Absolutely. Madam Chair, if I may.
Please.
Well, first of all, let me say this, because you said, it's a lot here and it's tedious. You said it's like whack-a-mole, which I understand. But let me tell you, Madam Vice Chair, you have given us a definitive starting point from where now everything is much clearer than it was. Like, I really appreciate that, like a definitive starting point. Let me say it this way. We could either, to move quickly, we could either go through, and like you said, there's some things that some people would think is important, some things that other people would think is important. We could go through and, you know, with us right here, there's not that many of us. So we can probably, if we can decide, one way we can do it, we can decide like the top 3 or 4 things that we feel are the most important things and attack those things like that. The only other way I would see to make things go quicker is to have, if we do develop a set of codes, we do develop a set of environmental codes, because that would be much quicker than for us to take each individual idea that we have and then try to implement it and get it passed through the existing village codes. So either one of those ways we could do it, Madam Vice Chair.
What will give us, and I will welcome other people to just chime in here. But what will give us, because I think, you know, so I've had conversations with Hugh and Adam and Colin. I've had conversations with other people in the village. I've been doing a lot of thinking and reading, and you know, I think that and I keep going back again to what Juan said on the last call. Like, we just wanted, like, I really want us to focus on whatever's going to give us teeth or skin in the game, like, to be able to, I think of it as a tool that the village can use in this, you know, in whatever's coming at us, right? So whatever's going to be the most, I mean, we can all make a nice statement, but I think we really need something that's like super functional for the village. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so okay, so if that those questions that I gave you guys before the first meeting, the third one says, should items that are more detailed be handled through adjustments to the existing village code? If you want something that has a lot of teeth, what we need to do then is we need to go with the first suggestion that I had, which is we need to choose the top 3 to 4 most important items that we feel, and we need to decide how we're going to implement them into the existing village code, because I can get them into the existing village code and right away they have teeth once they're in the existing village code. And so if you guys want to do it like that, what we can do is we can start off with the top 3 to 4 most important items that we want to tackle. We get those into the existing village code. After those are in the existing village code, this is an ongoing thing. We tackle the next 3 to 4 things that we feel or the next phase of what's important. And we just go like that, and we just go down like that. And it'll probably be like a 2-year process. But we can start to attack the top 3 to 4 things right away. If we want to give it teeth right away, we take those 3 to 4 things and we get them passed through the existing village code, and they have teeth right away.
Can I comment on the just what we're talking about is like the legal structure of how to make this enforceable? This feels more like a CDMP, Comprehensive Development Master Plan, Management Plan document, instead of a specific, I mean, I think we could put it in code too, but the CDMP allows us to do more general statements that are enforceable and the village has to comply with. I just would be interested in Camilla's perspective on what the best way to incorporate something like this into enforceable regulations or ordinances would be.
Well, I don't know if Mr. Gladwin, you want to say something before that, or should I mention, because you bring up a good point, but we did update the comprehensive plan recently, and that will support that what was updated. And we could go through the process again. It is a lengthier process, and it is a lot more complicated to update the comprehensive plan because the state agencies all have to review it, and there's 2 back and forth loops. But we did update it, and those general statements that were incorporated into the resilience element will support an update, a specific update to the code at this point. So if that was the way that you would want to move forward, is to incorporate specific regulations to, it could be a separate section. It doesn't have to be the zoning code. It could be within chapter 24, but not the form-based code, of course. There's already some resilience elements there. We could expand and add more detail. And as Mayor Nickerson said, just address the most, it would mean prioritizing the elements that are the greatest risk or the need to be addressed in first, and we can begin there. But the comprehensive plan would support that process. At the state it is there now.
Gotcha. Thanks, Gillian. That's really helpful. All right, that was my only comment. Sorry to interrupt. Kristen, I don't know if you want to handle the who calling on people, or do you want me to?
I'm fine to have you do it. I only have a single window open so that I can see my screen.
Okay.
A single, attendee window open, so.
All right, Hugh, go ahead.
Okay, I'm kind of respectfully disagreeing with you, Mayor Nickerson, here, because I think I go back to what Kristen said that she took from Juan at the last of this meeting, that the process, what a charrette is one part of a process that eventually leads to changes in codes or laws or the comp plan or whatever. But we're not there in the process leading to it. We're not even before that. So, I think right now I would say it's premature to talk about, how it would be implemented specifically. And I think, Adam and Kristen and Colin and I have been talking about this a lot since the last meeting over the last 2 weeks. And I was, I think the result of our last conversation was saying, I think, or at least this is what I felt, was this is a process that's going to take a while. And the first thing the task force needs to do is just sort of lay out the parameters, lay out the field, and that's what I think Kristen has done. Lay out all the resources people have to sort of look at during this process. And then what should happen at this meeting is just to say that and say, we need to start it. We need to start this process. We kind of don't really know. It has all these complex pieces that Kristen has talked about, but I think you as a task force have to authorize the process is something the village needs to do, and not worry now about, what's there. I think, just for example, I think Colin has made a great contribution to make us think about the importance of not only environmental issues, but also the importance of having kind of a better framework of structure and science and everything else there. We don't know how that's going to work, but I don't know. I don't think this is something. I think Kristen has brilliantly laid out the path forward, and right now the task is to start moving on it and thinking about sort of what that entails. So that's about it. Oh, but one quick thing, Kristen, it would be good if we could get a PDF of this or something.
You did grow.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We can post this, right? And we can
Yeah.
add it. We can include it in the documentation for today, and we can
Yeah,
also post
Perfect.
it.
Thank you.
Thanks, you. I'm sorry, I have to add, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the meeting, I have to go at 5:20. So just 10 minutes early. And
Okay.
I would have said continue without me, but I think I ruined the quorum.
That's fine. I think we can, we're off to a quick start, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Adam.
Okay, so I agree with what Hugh just said. The second thing I wanted to say is there should not be a separate environmental code that is in conflict with the zoning code. Like, if you want to see how that functions, you can go to the city of Miami, and it's a terrible disaster. On the other hand, I think a lot of the stuff that we're doing here doesn't need to be in the code at all, right? What we're doing is forming a cohesive, decisive statement of purpose that will allow the council to negotiate with developers, right? No, there doesn't have to be any kind of code written for that if the council agrees on it. It'll allow the council to pass a resolution to negotiate with developers, to have the administration negotiate with developers following a certain program that we're setting forth. It'll allow us to, direct the way that we respond to South Florida Water Management District, the Army Corps of Engineers, all of those sort of, extra Village of El Portal bodies that like none of our codes affect them in any way either, right? So like we just need to make like policy statements from the council. And I think if we can guide them clearly with this process, then that's a great first step. And it happens as soon as we've got the process, the idea down, right? And then
and there might be some
Camilla and
things though
Juan-
that I was gonna say that do wind up in the code, right? Like there'll be some things that
Exactly. Then after that initial thing, like, Juan and Camilla will like, is there a portion of this that could change the code? And if so, what are the legal ramifications and what is the carrot and the stick and all that kind of stuff? And yeah, like maybe things change. But like a lot of this stuff that we're talking about here is happening outside the village. It's like, we want to be telling Hialeah to do stuff. We want to be like governing what happens at the S27. And we have those options right now because we're at this very crucial juncture of time where South Florida Water Management District and the Army Corps and the county are all looking at us and they're like, what do you guys want? So I think that's also an important part of this. Like, I don't think we have to worry about exactly how it all falls out. What we have to do is like figure out what we want, like what is the problem and what are we going to do about it? What do we want to have done about it? That's it.
Thanks, Adam. Mayor Nickerson?
Yeah, how you guys doing? Appreciate it, Madam Chair. Okay, so let me just straighten some things out. First of all, so what Christian asked, Vice Chair McLean asked, she asked, what is the quickest way that we can get something done that has teeth? That's through the code. So I understand what Mr. Gladwin's saying, I understand what Mr. Old is saying, but if that's the answer to that particular question, now what you guys are saying, I don't disagree with, but that's not the quickest way to get something through that has teeth. Chairperson Carpenter brought up a good point, which is planning. It's much better through planning, but the reason why I didn't go that way, Chairperson Carpenter, was because I knew that through the planning situation, and if we were going to do something like that, I know it has to get state approved, and you know how that goes with the state. They'll wait 8 months, 9 months, 6 months or whatever before something gets approved. But I was particularly answering Vice Chair McLean's question about quickest way with teeth, and that's the code. Because as soon as we pass something through the code, then it automatically has teeth. Now, I understand what Mr. Old is saying about there's other organizations that we want to, apply things to and things like that also. But as far as developers, and I guess, and this is why we have different people up here that have different, mind frames, right? Because my first thing is I'm gonna think about developers, because that's what I deal with on a monthly basis. I think about that before I think about, the South Florida Water Management District and things like that. Not because I don't respect them, just because I deal with developers, right? So with developers, we can have a policy, but if it's not in the code, they're going to be like, we don't care what your policy is. It's not in your code. We don't even have to go for a variance. We can do what we want to do. But if it's in the code, they at the very least have to come before us with a variance. And if it's in the code, we can say, that's not our code, variance denied, or variance approved if we want to approve the variance. But if we want something with teeth, it has to be through the code. That's the quickest way. That's the only thing I was saying. Thank you.
I just want to interject. I don't think that these things are mutually exclusive. I think that we can do both. And I think coming up with a strategic plan that guides our actions as a task force and as a village is very useful and an immediate deliverable. But I agree, as just based on my experience trying to enforce some of these things in other municipalities and counties, I would definitely like to see at the end of the day, even if it's not the first thing out the door, the end of the day, something enforceable. So as you know, political winds change over the years, we have something that is holding, you know, El Portal's leadership to a certain standard.
And let me just say, Madam Chair, very quickly, and that's another thing, Madam Chair. You know, if we have policy, the council is going to change. And if the other council members that come behind us, if they don't believe in the policy, if, you know, or if they just like kind of like don't really think about it, then we have to kind of re-educate the new council members about what the policy is that we're looking for. But if it's in the code, it's in the code.
Or the comp
I don't
plan.
care, you know, or the comp plan, yes. Yeah, I don't like, you know, I don't care how many, you know, how many more council members come, like it's part of that. They have to go through the process if they want to change that, but it's there in black and white. So I don't disagree with you. I'm with you 100%, Madam Chairperson, on the comp plan. I was like I said, I was just answering the Vice Chair's question about the quickest way with T, which would be the code. That's the only thing I was answering. Thank you.
Thank you. Hugh?
Well, you know, the code is tremendously important, and there may be aspects of this that would have to go into the code now. I mean, I feel like I'm trying to think, like the task force has a different function than like the code and the code aspects of how the council implements the code, or how Plus Serbia has been implementing the comp plan. I mean, those things are another task. But the thing is, I think, I mean, when Adam was talking, I totally agreed with the way you put it, Adam. But the second thing that sort of hit me was, you know, you see this stuff talked about everywhere, and it's always like some kind of generic boilerplate. We've got to take care of this thing. We got to do this. We've got to be aware of housing. We've got to, you know, worry about water quality. But what this is about is getting us to go down to the specifics that need to ask people to get there. So yes, we do want some part of the code or some part of the comp plan that asks developers and asks residents to, you know, to do more things specifically, you know, but right now we haven't fully articulated what there are. We have to get there. You know, as I'll just give two quick examples of sort of what I'm saying. One is the Water Management District. It was wonderful to get this letter from them, see it last week, and find out that they said, guys, you know, you go on the task force, seriously commented and responded to our plan, and we did make changes and put them in. You know, but if you look at them right now, what they've added in are things that have these very generic, yes, we are going to worry about things like housing and water quality and all these different things, but they're not specific. You know, we want to ask them to do specific things, you know, and the problem with them is, you know, again, and this is outside this process that we're talking about today, but, you know, as Kristen said, we've got to deal with them, you know, and now they've put out this plan, and the part of the plan that they're now going to spend, what is it, 500 million on, affects the Little River, the C7. It affects us directly, you know, and it's great that what they've said in effect is, yes, we do have to consider the things that were raised by the by the Little River AAA and that you've talked about. And you look, I mean, the section in that huge document, the last version that covered what they're doing now, the biggest thing they're doing, which is the Little River C7, was only 2 pages. Now it's 5 pages, and now they're talking about things, but again, what's the generic thing there? Right now there's like tons of money in there. I don't know. They want to spend $5 million on real estate. The Little River AAA is budgeted separately. I think 300 million in brick money. Those are all things that, that letter, the Water Management District says, you guys, the task force, we're expecting you and El Pertal through the task force to tell us how to implement those things. So right now, I think this process has started, but I think it has to sort of be an ongoing combination of things where it's sort of, we pick areas that need to be, the task force says you need to do, something about the environment and housing in the area. So there's kind of a toolbox there. Okay, we can go to the AAA or whatever, and you can respond to that, and as you go on. And then I think the next biggest thing, I'm sorry, now I'm not being clear at all, but, I also think when you look at that, there's some missing items. You look at the task force, and it's not clear that if we consider things like the manatees and like fish kill, water quality issues, there is a huge and urgent environmental crisis affecting the ecosystem around the Little River. Like somewhere in there is the idea of an eco station park from my house, but I've said any number of times, people, if the manatees die, I don't see any point in doing it. What's the point of saving the Little River if it's just a concrete lined canal? So I think this is sort of a process that Adam's talking about, that a voyage we're going to, that eventually, as Juan said, will lead to code changes. And when that happens, then you'll work with the council to do it. But right now, there's no need for that for the code, I think. Sorry if it wasn't clear.
Thanks, you. It seems like we're all kind of on the same page, that it makes sense. Thank you, Kristen, by the way, for this very helpful change of direction and presentation. Seems like we all agree that some kind of strategic guiding plan or strategic guiding document, whatever we want to call it, is necessary to consider all these factors. And then perhaps once that's created, we want to make some portions of that enforceable for the future.
Yeah, I want to, first of all, I just want to thank Hugh, Adam, and Colin in particular for helping to put this presentation together, because this is how I know it's really successful as a way of conceptualizing it, because every single person who's talked so far has clearly brought their point of view out in relation to this document, which I think is really awesome. So we've addressed developers, we've addressed enforceability, Elizabeth, and your point of view around, Hugh has brought out his environmental concerns. I think it's great, because it means that we've managed to kind of put things together in a way that allows us now to have this kind of conversation. So thanks to my partners on that.
Yeah, thanks to all of you. Can I make one more comment, Kristen?
Yeah.
We jump back. Can I suggest adding 2 things to the initial page of the issues? I would add the RAP process, the reasonable assurance plan. And I would also add the stormwater permit compliance, or just stormwater permitting. We want to stay high level.
And I added the wrap presentation to the page at the LRC website, just FYI, Elizabeth.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth, is the stormwater permitting process?
Just stormwater permitting,
Okay,
or we could just say stormwater if we want to,
yeah.
stay broad. But we've been, Everglades Law Center has been talking extensively to the mayor and manager about our permit, and that really touches a huge overlay of the other things that you have listed here.
Hmm.
And that was my only comment. Thank you again.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that so I think what we need to think about right now is for the strategic plan that we're planning on developing. Do we want to do that, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair? Do we want to do that as a whole, or do we want to start to kind of like have a priority list of things that you guys might feel, or the task force might feel are the things that are more time sensitive, or things like that? We want to maybe start to prioritize what we're going to tackle first for this strategic plan.
I think it's, I'm sorry. Is it okay if I speak?
Yeah, of course. Vice Chair.
I think that there's definitely, I think the question for the task force, and this is a process question that kind of gets at what you just asked, is, there are things that we have to tackle in regular business that we already have going in regular business, like what we brought up on the last regular meeting, which is including the thing that Hugh mentioned, like the South Florida Water Management Plan, but also the things that Elizabeth raised, the RAP, the the compliance issues. I feel like this is probably has to be worked in tandem, and I don't know if we need everybody on it, or if I think that ideally you have a working group working on this, then bringing things back to the committee. And maybe it does have, we're such a small committee that maybe everybody is going to work on this separately, or maybe it's a smaller working group. I don't know. I'm happy to continue to work on this because I think it's really important. I think I don't know what everyone else's tolerance is. And also, can we add some of our non-committee members to a working group specifically too? That's a question I have process-wise.
Yeah, as long as like, for example, if you're part of the task force, Madam Vice Chair, if you do work with Adam and Hugh and Colin, then you guys can be a working group. Absolutely.
Right, but we can't have Elizabeth and me without having everybody, right?
No, you can't have anybody else in the task force as part of your working group if it's not a public meeting.
Well, I'm open to suggestions.
But like, for example, Madam Vice Chair, you can have your working group with, let's say, Hugh, Adam, and Colin, and then Mr. Brown, and then Chairperson Carpenter can have a separate working group with Adam and Hugh that doesn't discuss the stuff that you're working in your working group with Hugh and Adam and Colin.
So we could work on a couple, we could, if we get to a point where we want to break up into maybe somebody's working on a code element and someone else is working on perspective designs for something else, we could do that separately.
Absolutely. Like that Madam Chairperson, which she would never do. She just can't be like, so what is Kristen working on? but I know, like, for example, one working group, Madam Chairperson Carpenter is her, myself, and Manager Lou. We've been really coming close together over the past like 3-4 months, and we're really establishing like our own little tandem right there. So
yeah, I think it makes sense. I love the idea of if we need to break out into working groups that don't touch each other, doing that. But I think it makes sense to make this our next big task force initiative, and keep moving it forward like we did at the beginning when we were first pumping out documents, doing it in the same way that we did that, where each time the document goes up on the screen and gets talked through and people make changes and we come back together again.
So does that mean that we are comfortable working it in alternating meetings? Because I think that's kind of the best structure.
Feel free to add me to whatever group you want to put me on. I am here to get stuff done.
That's the True Hero way right there.
Yep.
So and you know, and not to beat a dead horse for lack of a better term, but do we want to, even in the working groups or whatever we get, do we want to start giving our working groups different subject matters that are more of a priority, you know, prioritize these different categories? Like, for example, like here, the you know, the annex Kavista sites might be a higher priority than you know, endangered species, because it might be more time sensitive, the annex Kavista site. So that might be something we might want to move forward on first before we you know, and not to say endangered species is not important, but that might be more time sensitive than endangered species. So we might want to start looking at what we want to prioritize working on first in our work.
I'm wondering, oops, sorry. I'm wondering whether or not we should take this page and this page, right? So this is like stuff that's already happened, but that is either ongoing or is a resource. And then this next page, which may have other things we want to add to it, which is the stuff that could be in front of us potentially. And I know that there's like, to the point, right, that there is a mix of different types of things on here. But can I suggest that perhaps we talk through some prioritization with an eye towards what particularly things on, you know, things that are coming at us, like,
Yeah,
I'm just trying to figure out how to, I think we have to prioritize, and I'm thinking about how do we prioritize? Go ahead, Adam.
I'm wondering if maybe though we need like an outline, like if we have like a master document that has subsections for all these things in it, because they all work together. So I feel like it's hard to break one thing out of it.
So my goal, like for the past day, has been to figure out like what are the problems that have like breakpoints or tipping points coming up, like in what order, right?
That's
and
awesome.
So to me, I think this is like a good way to do it, just to kind of like vomit it on paper. But like, to me, the fact that Mayor Nickerson was elected is a totally kind of like cool thing that happened, but it's not, doesn't have a tipping point necessarily for the next few years. So the things that I think are like coming up quickly, and once they happen, we never get them back.
Yeah.
Are like the flood resilience plan when it becomes not a draft anymore. And I know we already shot the deadline for like commentary on it, which like this process would have been totally awesome to have put in the commentary, like when we're done with this whole engagement thing. But like, I still think we should try to get something into it based on their commentary to Elizabeth and, you know, their sort of like willingness to work with us. Because I think they know the thing they've proposed is ridiculous and not going to happen, right? Like the putting 6-foot seawalls along the canal and a forward pump and like, you know, just sort of like doing the gray infrastructure thing. It's not going to happen like that for a variety of political reasons. So, but I think we should try to like influence them before they publish the final result of their thing. The second thing is Kavista. They're developing already. So like, we have like a very limited time to like make any commentary on it whatsoever, right? Like, I don't know if they probably have to come to the council for some site plan approval, as like everybody does. So the council has the ability to have teeth if they have something to bite with, you know? And then the third is like Little Farm. It's gonna get sold, you know, in the next couple of years. And when it gets sold, it's going to get sold to a developer that has an idea of what's supposed to happen there. So whether or not we have a new zoning code in place at the time, you know, the last developer bought it with the charrette in place, and they knew damn well we're not going to approve something that's far outside the realm of what happened in that charrette. It wasn't enough, and it wasn't quite right. And so we have to go back and do it again. But I think we should make sure that before it's sold, we have another environmentally conscious, housing conscious charrette that's happened to really dial it in on the riverfront there. So those are my three like big ones. And then I'm sure Elizabeth has ideas about like the raft and the stormwater stuff that I don't know what the deadlines are, but I guess there are deadlines that we should probably know about. So those are the three that like jump out to me as being, and then it's like the seagrass is dying, like we have to save it, you know?
Yeah.
That's
So
it.
would it make sense then? So I agree, there's priorities, you know, that don't, there's top priorities and medium priorities and low priorities. But it feels like the intention of this process though is to create a all-encompassing plan. So I mean, maybe we create some kind of, I'm just making a suggestion that I'm not set on, but maybe we create some kind of outline and put our prioritizations in there and fill it out in a strategic way. So maybe we don't touch some of the, you know, I don't know, some of the other issues that don't need to be touched in the next couple months till later. And that becomes, you know, part of our December task force work or something like that. But it seems like the benefit is having a one collective plan or document that guides everything. So I don't want to, I think that that's important. And I know it was you all's inspiration for that, but I don't want to lose track of that either.
I think that it's a small enough, I mean, the truth is that we have to be somewhat reactive. And I actually really like Adam's inflection point structure for this, because it does allow us to put energy into the things that are going to, and I would say, Adam, like we should probably put those in like in order, right? In terms of most urgent and on the way down. And I think, Elizabeth, couldn't we start with something that will help us address those things, and then we can add subsequent things to it, to your point, right? I mean, we have to be somewhat strategic about how we approach these things, because, you know, the whole point of this is that people are coming at us and we need to try to, you know, meet the challenges. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just think we should circle those priorities that we're working on into some larger document.
Right. Well, coherent response was kind of my goal, right? Coherent response.
Yes, that's perfect. Hugh?
Yeah, I mean, as you're saying all this, you know, yesterday it hit me that a tipping point is passed without even realizing it. It was when last week at the meeting, Mayor Nickerson talked about going to the county because he got the signal from Elizabeth that we're ready to move on the wrap thing, you know, as soon as they approve, and they were completely unaware of it. And then for me, the big shocker was yesterday to hear from Adam that Katie Hageman has left. Now, when you consider the Little River AAA and you consider everything that has happened, it's Katie, it's not Merle. It's she is, you know, all the way back to 5 years ago with all the modeling stuff, the collaboration with the Water Management District and all the county agencies, put that together. She really built and put together the Little River AAA, drawing on people. You know, so I don't know. We're at a tipping point in terms of, we've been thinking of doing all this in collaboration with the county and county resilience. And I'm really hoping that in some of your meetings with those folks, Mayor Nickerson, you're going to come with some better news that maybe she's going to be replaced with someone as good as she was. But, you know, I mean, you just see the operation. You see how everybody, even though she's quiet, you don't realize everybody there that's under her, or all the people that have made that, and they're, you know, they're totally devoted to her leadership. You know, so a lot of these things are things that, you know, can't wait for a code or a working out of priorities. They're things that El Portel's gonna have to respond to, protect our own interests, and in that vacuum, as Adam said, the water management plan is going to get solidified, and it's going to become the plan unless, I don't know what else is going on. So I
The
think,
plan does get updated every year.
right, but they're planning to spend the money now they're planning to,
They're already halfway through, I think, the design phase for the pump.
yeah, well, the pump actually isn't going to add that much. I mean, it's just like the El Jardín pump that we're applying for too is crucial for us. But the big thing is something, that's been in everything the task force has done from the beginning. And it was very prominent in the, that first letter, that statement that came from El Portel that was drafted by you guys, the task force, and that's the fact that regardless of what happens, the only way to really get the water out of the river sufficient to drain the, the areas of the county north is to let gravity do it by allowing the water to go up to 6 feet or something like that during a major flood event. We have to be prepared for the consequences of the little river in front of us going up to 6 feet high every time there's a huge torrential flood event. So one way or the other, we have to deal with that. And, again, it's as Adam said, and I said, if we don't take a stand and say, in our list of issues that Kristen outlined, these are the ones that have to be dealt with on that, they're not going to be dealt with. And then the tipping points are going to come in a whole bunch of areas. So.
Mayor Nickerson?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Member Fruitstone, you guys are the task force. So first of all, I just wanted to say that, we definitely, I think, Madam Chairperson, what you said earlier about kind of like, writing this down, these options and kind of like categorizing them and, and writing them out in like an outline format, I think might be good also. I just wanted to say really quickly to the three of you, Madam Chairperson, Madam Vice Chairperson, Member Fruitstone, whatever you guys have here that touches politics or is political, you can give it to me for whatever group that I'll have. The wrap I know already is more or less being handled by myself, Chairperson Carpenter, Manager Lou. We even this morning attended a meeting, for having to do with the Biscayne Bay. What was it called? The Biscayne Bay. What was it called, Madam Chairperson? I have it in my thing. What did we attend today?
Sorry, I was on mute. The Biscayne Bay Commission.
Yeah, we attended this morning. So I just want to say anything political, you guys can give it to me in my groups. The wrap I'll take care of. The Native American mound, I know that Mr. Brown has already been, reaching out to myself and Manager Lou about that. And that kind of brought me to like the second point that I want to make. So just first of all, you guys can give me the wrap. Myself, Chairperson Carpenter, and Manager Lou could be a group that takes care of the wrap. You guys can give me the Native American mound, and anything else political you guys can put on me and whatever group that I have. Also, there'll be things that, so for example, let's say South Florida, I'm just using this as an example. So let's say South Florida Water Management District. There might be a part of that might be an environmental portion. There also might be a part of that topic that might be a political portion. All right. So for things like that, anything political, even if it's from a single topic and there's an environmental side and the political side, anything political, just give it to me. Okay. When you guys are kind of thinking about who should get what group and who should do what, just give me those. But from the very beginning, the Native American mound, because that we're doing that parks situation. We already have that. So Native American Mound, you guys can give that to me, myself, Mr. Brown, and myself, Chairperson Carpenter, Manager Lou. Anything political you guys can away, just kind of like to get mind going as far as how you guys want to kind of pass things out. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mayor. So do we want to talk about our priorities then, and then create a Kristen, what do you, I'll just defer to you. What's your takeaway from this?
So I think that so are we all in agreement that we want to try to work this in parallel with the regular business of so we're really talking.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So
Mayor Bell, I assume.
Yeah. So I think we just need to work out a schedule for that. And it sounds to me like we should continue to meet with this group, and we'll call it a working group, whatever it is. Right. And I with the input of our outside non-committee members who are here. It seems to me like that, Elizabeth, you've already mentioned the RAP process and stormwater permitting to add. I think we need to add those to this. Is there anything else that anybody else would like to add now to any either stuff that previously happened or stuff that is in front of us? Because I think that what we should do is actually using both Adam's tipping point model and also what Mayor Nickerson just said in terms of like, what can we just push over into the political process and leave it over there and kind of move it sideways, and then decide which of these things. I think I would like to kind of put these bubbles into buckets based on those two, so there's a kind of, I don't know, or maybe it's a quadrant, but whatever, like, there's the stuff that is urgent that we need to deal with as a committee. There's the stuff which is urgent, but belongs in the political process and is going to be handled by Mayor Nickerson. Probably nothing in here is not urgent. But that we can probably bucket these and then come up with on the next meeting, hopefully be able to use a little further visualization to help us decide what things should be included in a guiding document as a first jumping off point. And then maybe we can put them into an outline based on what you suggested, Elizabeth. That would be my suggestion, maybe as a next step.
I think that sounds like a great suggestion.
How do you feel, Maribel? Is Maribel still with us?
Yes.
I am still here. Whatever you guys decide is fine in the interest of the village and whatever is prioritized, so because again, I sensed and heard like urgency in everyone's voices with suggestions on getting stuff done to protect the Little River and the village's interest in the Little River. So I'm totally in support. You just send me a Zoom link and my information and I will be able to give feedback.
And I think there's going to be some things on our next regular meeting that are going to actually be feeding into this, right? So some of our regular business that we can discuss it through this lens a little bit on our next meeting, and that will help us give some structure to this.
Yeah, I agree.
For next time.
I would, one other thought, as we're breaking out this master plan or, whatever we want to call it into priorities, I think it would be useful in the interim before we get to code changes or master plan amendments to have the task force to have some kind of final guidance memo for each piece, right? So if we're talking about what we want to do with the RAP, have that written down and then have the task force actually vote on it as like a task force, I don't know what the correct term is for it, but then at least it's not actually enforceable from a legal perspective, but then we have something that the council has in front of them that has been passed and approved by a body of the village. And I think it keeps a little more, it carries a little bit more weight if we vote on it. So I would suggest that.
Right, it makes it more concrete.
Right. So as we get pieces finished, I think we can vote on those pieces, discuss them as a task force, and then vote on those pieces.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah, so this would, so it's perfect because it would kind of be like, this would kind of be looked at as kind of like a subcommittee, right? So, you know, we have like for the council, we have committees, and then we pass them, we bring it to the full council, or we have the task force and we pass things to the task force and we brought it to the full council. This could be kind of like a subcommittee of the task force. What comes out of here, we finalize it officially at the task force level, voted in. So perfect, absolutely perfect.
That then becomes an official recommendation from the task force.
Absolutely, 100%. Very.
Like kind of like the Biscayne Bay Watershed Management Board, right? They make recommendations to the county, but they're not binding, but they're persuasive.
I think one of the big issues is like, what are the items that we're like, what is each item, right?
I don't know that I totally understand.
Well, like is the wrap an item, like you said, or is it like water quality, right? And
Well,
the wrap is a means to achieve like that. For me, like the way I look at it, and it's probably because I'm not like involved in the politics day to day of like what's going on with the Little River, but like the way I see it is like there's these problems that we all know exist, and like different items are sort of siloed to do like different problems, and ideally we'd like to sort of like unsilo those and like put them into a holistic framework that addresses all the items at once. So like, you know, there's a lot of issues that like I think sustainability and resilience should be talking about that like aren't really on this thing. Like I think we should be talking about, you know, the price of housing and you know, the resilience of people to live and move if they have to with flooding and things like that. To me, like that's a part of this conversation, but it's also like difficult to figure out how it fits into the specific conversation. And that especially, like, I don't think it fits in if we're like, there's the wrap, right? Like, so to me, I would say like, one of the issues is like flooding, or like the people that live alongside the river kind of thing. And like, what are we doing to like take care of those people in a way, right? So like that's flooding, that's water quality, that's, you know, it's a lot of these issues sort of like get wrapped up. I'm totally like just off on my own tangent. Sorry.
Yeah, so Adam, my thought with having something approved for, let's use the wrap as an example, in the advocacy that I do, at least in my professional life, we do a lot of comment letters, right? And like what the comment letter that we sent to the South Florida Water Management District about last year's flood mitigation plan, it had all of our priorities in it. So with the wrap, if we approve something in the task force related to the wrap, it would basically be the task force, you know, as a representative of the villages, priorities for what we want in there. And that could include flooding, septic to sewer, sea level rise, you know, health from, you know, contaminated flood waters, like whatever our priorities are that touch the wrap would be in essentially a comment letter that would guide the interactions we have with the county as it relates to our involvement in the wrap.
They're like guiding
yeah,
principles,
okay.
right? Guiding principles that are concrete enough to be able to be
Exactly.
take action against.
So I'm doing a lot of advocating about the wrap with the Everglades Law Center, and we've you know, talked about it and followed it and see as it changed, and we have, you know, like 6 points that we're like, we want to see this, we want to see this, you're not considering this, think about nature-based features, things like that, and we keep pushing those priorities forward and trying to see how the process is adapting to encompass those priorities. And I'm imagining this is basically an advocacy priority document. Did
that makes sense to me.
All right, awesome.
Elizabeth, it's 5:19.
Oh,
Just want to
okay,
point out
thank
to
you. Yeah,
Mhm.
I completely lost track of time. I unfortunately have to wrap up because I have to run for another meeting.
Can we pick a date? Or
So
we can
Madam
pick it?
Chair,
Yeah.
yeah, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, let's just go for it. Let's just, because we know we have to do with, going into our next meeting, how we're gonna prioritize and start to like figure that out. Let's go to our next date, and then we can go from there to adjournment so that you can get out of here, and I think we're good.
September 14th is the proposed date.
I put September 14th only because, Madam Chair, our next regular scheduled task force meeting is the 24th. After that, we have, we have 31st is open, but that's the week right after that. The September 7th is open, but I just put the 14th just because I don't know how much you guys want to do back-to-back meetings, so.
I'd go for the 7th myself.
I was gonna say, I'd like to move it up.
Okay,
But the 31st or the
7th is good.
Okay,
okay, but understand now, our regular meetings are usually the first Wednesday. So now we can put this one the 7th, but then we'll move our regular one to what, the third Wednesday, maybe the 21st? Remember, our regular meetings are usually the first Wednesday, but they've just been off a little bit because of this meeting.
When is
So
our
I-
next regular meeting?
24th of August.
Got it.
How about the 3rd of August?
What we usually do,
Boom.
we use.
I feel like we need to have some urgency,
I-
so I'm game to move it to the 7th.
The 7th of September?
7th of or the 31st. I'm good either way, actually.
I could do the 31st. I agree. I don't
Yeah,
want to leave it.
I
too
am,
long.
yeah, I don't want to do it next week. I'm unable to do it. It's my 20th anniversary.
Ah,
Just think, the only,
congratulations.
yeah, the only reason, Adam, is
I'd prefer the end of the month.
But could
yeah.
you do the 31st?
so we'll do the 31st for the special. So we'll do the 24th is the regular, the
Yeah.
31st will be this one. All right, okay? All right,
Okay.
you guys. Madam Chair, you can go ahead through the rest of the agenda. I think you'll be able to go through it very, very quickly.
Okay, thank you. I assume no unfinished business since this is a special meeting. Any good and welfare from anyone? Any new business? Awesome. All right, I just need a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Maribel, you have to be the second. You're the other member. Maribel, you have to be the second. Member Fruitstone.
Can I motion and Kristen?
vote-
second?
No, okay, I got it. I second the motion. I'm sorry. I was driving by Jackson and you guys were glitching.
That's
Oh, it's
okay.
all good.
Thanks, Maribel.
Sorry.
No, thank you. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Hearing no nay, meeting's officially adjourned at 5:23.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for all your
Bye.
work, Adam, Q. Thank you, Camilla.
thank-
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Colin.
Vice Chair.
Thank you,
Thank you
Colin.
for a good
All right,
meeting.
take care.
You're
We're
great,
off to a good
guys.
start, you guys. We're off to a good start.
Yep,
believe it or not.
yep.
All right, you guys take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.